Talking about the homelessness problem, and by the way, this is the big day of giving, and my charity of choice is Volunteers of America. And I'm very honored, and it's a pleasure to have my guest on the program this afternoon. Sherman Haggerty is a distinguished gentleman. He's a philanthropist. He's an author. He's written a book entitled Hope Disappearing, A Population Left Behind, a behind-the-scenes look at growing crisis of homelessness in our nation. He's got a great background for this because he's a businessman. He's well-educated with a master's degree in management from the Peter F. Drucker Graduate Management Program at Claremont College. He worked for 35 years in the home building business, so he understands that ultimately becoming an executive in what would become the nation's largest home building enterprise. He's also got a background with Volunteers of America, and he has seen this up close and personal in person, and I think has tremendous thoughts and ideas on this, and it's my pleasure to welcome Sherman Haggerty to the program. Mr. Haggerty, welcome, sir. Great to have you. Thanks for taking time out to join us.
Thank you very much, John. I appreciate it.
Pleasure to have you. And I have really, truly enjoyed your book. It's extraordinary. I think you have the nature of your work has reinforced some of my previously held beliefs, and frankly, probably caused me to see some things a bit differently. But I do have a lot of questions for you, and I'm going to start out with one that just kind of a broad question in general. First of all, I'm going to ask you, what do you think are the common misperceptions about the homelessness epidemic?
Well, first off, I think most people have the same misconceptions that I had before I started working with the homeless.
Right.
That the homeless are there by choice and not interested in moving on. Over the last 7 years, I've met very few, if any, that fit that description. I don't believe anyone chooses to end up in the homeless environments that you see on our street and along our river. Also, I believe a much higher percentage than people imagine of those people are capable of being stabilized, trained, and put back to work in livable wage jobs and exiting homelessness from that. The reunions that we witnessed out here at Mather Community from people who finished our program and went back to work reminded us that even after decades of separation, that these people are somebody's brother, sister, son, or daughter, and most of them still maintain the same potential they had before they ran into the issues that they ran into. So it's a population, I think, that's worthy of more services and treatment than they get, and worthy of more opportunity to become contributing members of the community, which is a message that we heard over and over from the people that have come through our programs.
Now, you point out the fact that alcohol and other drug addiction is a major impact. What specifically in that area? What do you see? In fact, I'm going to ask you overall, if you could actually just have the opportunity to create a program to address the homelessness crisis, what would be your first orders of business?
Well, and that's a great question, John. The new environment in homeless care and the new attitude, especially when it comes to federal policy, is that our objective is to end homelessness, not to end substance abuse. And I think it's a absolute failed policy. Homelessness and substance abuse are tied together at the hip. Not everybody has substance abuse before they go out on the street and try to survive as a homeless individual, but significant time on the street will lead someone to start using drugs. And then there's also the reverse that happens. People start using drugs, and because they fall into addiction, end up losing their job and their means and end up on the street for that reason. But it's very difficult to separate homelessness from substance abuse, and it's very difficult to leave homelessness without addressing the issues of substance abuse. So I'm very disappointed that the funding that was in place before that facilitated recovery and required substance abuse, not allowing substance abuse in order to have housing alternatives has gone away. So my hope is that, we can get back to homeless services that also address those instances of substance abuse and provide support and recovery options for people who are trying to exit homelessness. I don't think if we have that, if we don't put in requirements, it's going to be very difficult for us to have a long-term impact on this problem.
I noticed in the introduction to your book, you write, if you do not care about the growing number of human beings who are homeless, the demise of their future potential, or its potential social impact, then this book is not for you. But I read that sentence very carefully because I do sense that there is growing, I'll say, hostility toward the homeless community because, quite frankly, while every one of those people represents a soul and a person who's in a position where they could take advantage of and should be living a better life, there is a sense of frustration on the part of the general public because it creates a negative adverse element on the streets and the parks and the communities. But I noticed in that sentence you included the fact potential social impact, because I think it's not just people who have this profound sense of care for the people who are living the homeless lifestyle, but what the existence, the explosive numbers in this regard is doing to the community overall. So this social impact, as you write. What do you think about any potential to try to get more people to understand what it takes to turn this around? I have lamented for years that most government entities measure success by the amount of money they spend on a program, and you point out the fact that you can't spend your way out of this. It's got to be substantive corrections, substantive efforts to really turn it around. So what is there a place for everybody in society to recognize the need to make changes here?
Yeah, and I think it certainly is working its way up the board as a very visual problem, and now it's becoming, as you mentioned, it's not just a concern about seeing people being homeless. There's also now an economic impact that's happening because the sheer numbers of people are disrupting certain business locations, making it more difficult for people to operate. The amount of money that has to be spent on trying to create affordable housing solutions is going off the charts. That's the negative aspect. The positive aspect of that is that I believe that recognition and that impact that has now become an economic impact can help rally the private sector to get more involved in the solutions that have to happen for homeless care. Because, John, quite frankly, I think the problem is way too big for just the local government to be able to find the solutions and create the programming and have the ingenuity and resources to solve this problem. I think the entire community is going to have to get involved, including the business community, to come up with creative solutions. And there are some creative ideas out there for creating integrated care facilities for people who are experiencing homelessness to help reduce the population. And that's what we think is the biggest opportunity that's in front of us right now, are opportunities to reduce the existing population as new people continue to enter the scene. But we're going to have to get our arms wrapped around the substance abuse on the front end, in addition to the back end.
Clearly something's changed. I don't know, what's it been, a decade or so that you've just seen this explosive in terms of the incidence of people living on the streets. The numbers just really seems to have taken a huge increase in the last decade or so. Prior to that, there would be homeless people that we'd call them transients, and they'd kind of want to be in the shadows and not really all that visible in the community. But that has changed dramatically. And I do sense an increasing element of hostility, and that's unfortunate. But perhaps that hostility can help motivate people to want to be a part of solutions. So it sounds as though you've got some good plans. I'm very impressed with what you've put in writing. I encourage people to read the book, Home Disappearing: A Population Left Behind by Sherman Haggerty. It is a very, very good work, and I think it's reflective of a sincere level of compassion, but also a significant dose of reality as to what can be done, what should be done, and a recognition of the fact that there is hope for a different outcome. But continuing to do what we've been doing does not seem like it's got any future. Would you agree with that?
I absolutely agree with that. And, as I point out in the book, John, I really think that we had a system in place not that long ago that was very capable of moving large people out of homelessness, and we can learn a lot from just reviewing things that have worked well in the past as opportunities to at least get started.
All right. Well, thank you very much for your time. Thanks for your good work, Sherman. I really, truly appreciate it. Sherman Haggerty, check out the book. Check out what he has to offer. And please check out Volunteers of America as a very, very worthy cause. Appreciate your time very much, Sherman. That's it from me. As you can tell.